Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Vaibhav Jyotsna Shrivastava, and with me is Sara Mushtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India and US successfully conclude 18th edition of joint military exercise Yuddhabhyas in Indian state of Uttarakhand. First G20 Sherpa meeting under Indian presidency to begin in Udaipur on Sunday. India's bioeconomy grew 8 times in the last 8 years. US Air Force unveils new nuclear stealth bomber B-21 to replace aircraft flown in the Cold War. 7 vessels carrying agricultural products left Ukraine seaports under the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Indian shooter Rudransh Patil clinches ISSF President's Cup in Egypt. At FIFA World Cup in Qatar, Netherlands beat US 3-1 to reach the quarterfinals. Argentina to take on Australia later tonight. And in cricket, first 3-match ODI series between India and Bangladesh to begin at the Sher-e-Bangla National Stadium in Dhaka on Sunday. India and the United States have successfully concluded the 18th edition of joint military exercise Yuddhabhyas in the Oli district of Indian state of Uttarakhand on Saturday. The U.S. Embassy in India in a tweet said the joint military exercise like Yuddhabhyas reinforces our commitment to the Indo-Pacific region, improves interoperability and takes the U.S.-India defense partnership to newer heights. The Indian Army also talked about the greater synergy between both the armies as a result of the exercise. Exercise Yuddhabhyas conducted annually between India and USA with the aim of exchanging best practices, tactics, techniques and procedures between the armies of the two nations. The previous edition of the exercise was conducted at the joint base Elmendorf, Richardson, Alaska in the United States in October 2021. Indian Lake City Udaipur of Rajasthan is all set to host the first G20 Sherpa meeting beginning on Sunday. The 4-day meeting will be presided over by the Indian Sherpa Amitabh Kant. Representatives of 19 countries, including from European Union, and 9 special invitee countries will take part in the meeting. Our correspondent reports that G20 Sherpa meeting will also help in projecting Udaipur as an international tourist destination. India formally assumed the presidency of the G20 on the 1st of this month. As a host nation, it will set the agenda of the next year's summit meeting to be held in New Delhi. Talking to AIR News, Mr. Kant outlined the priority of Indian presidency.
The priority area, first and foremost, the challenges has to be to accelerate the pace of inclusive, equitable and sustainable growth. Secondly, it's very important to ensure that there is fair and just climate financing, which the developed world was committed to. And thirdly, to ensure that there is acceleration in the implementation of SDG. And there are many other Indian narratives like lifestyle for sustainability, changing how do you change individuals' lifestyle so that there is climate action. There is many other agenda for the world like green hydrogen, like digital public goods. All these are critical for the global economy to have energy transition and for the world pace of growth to accelerate in the coming years. All these will be brought center stage during our presidency.
The Group of 20 represents almost 85% of the global GDP, about 2/3 of the world population, and over 75% of the global trade.
India has formally assumed the presidency of G20 for 1 year, and as Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, India's G20 agenda will be inclusive, ambitious, action-oriented and decisive. Professor Rohitdas Mundhe of the Department of Civics and Politics at the Mumbai University said that priority of India will be combating terrorism during its G20 presidency.
India has become the president of G20 on 1st December 2022. At the same time, India has also become the president of United Nations Security Council for next 1 month. India has become the president of both the organization at such a critical juncture where world is facing many challenges and issues such as climate change, terrorism, global food security, global health, sustainable development, etc. For India, terrorism will be the priority to solve it because since many decades, India is facing this issue. It's not only India, but many countries in the world facing the terrorist issues. And therefore, it is an opportunity for India as the president of G20 to become the voice of Global South, to become the voice of developing countries, to become the voice of underdeveloped countries and solve this problem and show to the world the path of development, prosperity and peace. Therefore, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi commented on the India's presidency as G20, he said the theme for G20 for next 1 year will be One Earth, One Family, One Future. It means this is inconsistent with India's culture, that is, whole universe is our family.
India's Union Minister of State for Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh, has said the country's bioeconomy has grown 8 times in the last 8 years under Prime Minister Modi, from $10 billion in 2014 to over $80 billion in 2022. Dr. Singh was addressing the International Conference on Emerging Trends in Biosciences and Chemical Technology in Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University in Katra in Jammu and Kashmir on Saturday. Dr. Singh said biotech startups have grown 100 times in the last 8 years, from around 52 to over 5,300. He pointed out, from a paltry investment of 10 crore rupees in bioeconomy in 2014, the fund growth saw 400 times hike to 4,200 crore rupees in 2022, creating over 25,000 high-skilled jobs.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on making India a manufacturing hub. The participants are economic analysts Dr. Ranjit Mehta and Gopal Krishna Agrawal. S. Rangbhasham, AIR correspondent, is moderating the conversation.
Dr. Mehta, to talk about India's manufacturing and export growth, let me begin with the manufacturing sector. The Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, for manufacturing for the month of November has come at 55.7, which is up from 55.3 in the previous month and has been consistently up in the last couple of months. Can we take this as a clinching evidence that the Indian economy is doing well? And more specifically, the manufacturing sector is really hale and hearty.
Definitely, it is a very positive sign, and also the kind of push the government of India has given the manufacturing sector in past around 2-3 years, those fruits are, in fact, we are reaping these fruits right now.
Mr. Agrawal, the manufacturing PMI, that is the Purchasing Managers Index for the month of November, has seen a figure of 55.7, and this has risen from 55.3 in the previous month, and it's been consistently up for the last 3 months. How do you see the numbers?
If you look into the PMI index, the post-COVID, it has been in the expansionary mode basically, and if also compare it with the services sector, you will find that the services sector PMI has also increased. So, in spite of recession at the global level, the manufacturing sector in India is in an expansionary mode, rising. And if you also look into the FICCI's report on survey, it also says that 70% of the surveyed industries has shown that they are having capacity utilization above 70%. So, many of the manufacturing sector are at a good level of capacity utilization. They have expansion plan, and the government is also working to support the manufacturing sector through production link incentives and other spending on the infrastructure, reducing the cost of logistics for transportation of raw material and finished goods, and also reserving certain manufacturing of the defense equipment domestically, procurement of defense requirement domestically. So these all are helping the economy, particularly manufacturing sector, to revive, and government has good target that in near future will increase the contribution of the manufacturing sector to GDP from 15% to 25%.
Right.
So there has been a concentrated effort on the part of government to support manufacturing, give them all kind of ease of doing business, whether availability of land, permissions, availability of power, and so that the manufacturing sector improves.
Dr. Mehta, recently we got the GDP numbers, 6.3% for the second quarter of financial year ending 2023. This kind of a manufacturing uptick, and even in other sectors, the economy is doing well. Can we expect, in the next two quarters, Q3 and Q4, that the impetus on manufacturing and the growth in manufacturing will have a reflection in the GDP figures as well?
You see, India's exports, there has been a tremendous growth over the past 2 years. Now, India has already reached around 418 billion manufacturing exports in the fiscal year 2022. Actually, India contributes around 3.1% to the GDP these exports contribute. Now, with the kind of schemes like such as PLI, the government has announced in 13 sectors, this is definitely going to give a push to the manufacturing sector. However, as far as the economy is concerned, there are many geopolitical issues in the world right now, such as, Ukraine and Russia conflict. So it has given pressure to the energy prices, you can say, in Europe and other countries. Even India imports around 80% of crude oil for its consumption. So inflation is definitely, I would say, worrying point here. Otherwise, our economy is very resilient, and it is still the fastest growing economy in the world.
That's true. And now I'll put the same question to Mr. Agarwal. Recently, we had the GDP figures for the second quarter of this financial year, which came at 6.3%. Do you think this buoyancy in manufacturing will also have a reflection in the overall GDP figures in the next two quarters?
Definitely, if the manufacturing sector increases, then the GDP figure will also increase. But our focus on the manufacturing sector is that it creates a lot of employment. And particularly, our focus is on MSME sector, which has a force multiplier with regard to creating employment opportunities. Because per capita labor output is higher in MSME sector. So we are focusing our manufacturing sector, particularly MSME sectors, and value addition at the agriculture sector is also being focused by these schemes like One District, One Product, and support to the cooperative sector, farmer producer organizations. All these are creating good opportunities in the rural economy also. Government is focusing that more than 50-60% of our population resides in the rural areas, and if the activity shifts merely from the urban areas to the rural areas, it will give a better economic growth. So focus on the MSME sector, focus on the rural economy, focus on the agriculture sector, particularly value addition, defense sector and infrastructure sector. These will all help into creating a higher GDP and at the same time ease of doing business and demand in the economy.
But Dr. Mehta, let me bring in the global perspective as well. Everywhere it's being spoken about that, there is a clear-cut global slowdown. But do you think that, this global slowdown will, sooner or later catch up with India as well? Is there a real apprehension, real fear about this?
Global slowdown, definitely it will have some impact on Indian economy. But India is a huge market with 1.4 billion people. So we have a large consuming population here in India. And Indian economy is very, very resilient. So therefore, though this geopolitical issues and other economies, when they are slowing down like Europe and US, so in that case, India will definitely have the impact of that global slowdown. But the kind of push the government of India has given to the manufacturing sector, and we can see that India is attracting a lot of foreign direct investment right now. So therefore, we are very, very confident and positive on Indian economy. And same way, we have seen the statements of various economists world leaders that India remains the most attractive destination in the world for the investment.
And now I put the same question to Mr. Agarwal. At this point, I also want to bring in the global perspective. Everyone globally is talking about perceptible slowdown in the economy, whether it is Europe, America or elsewhere. Do you think there's a real apprehension, a fear that this global slowdown could also, catch up with India sooner or later and probably, try to bring down our growth as well?
There is really a big challenge at the global level post-pandemic. That is about recession in many countries, particularly Europe, China and America. Those economies are slowing down. And second is the inflation. US is reeling down under very high inflation. Europe is having problem with regard to energy, gas supply, energy supply. And China is having its own problem with regard to its post-pandemic lockdown. But these challenges are creating opportunity for India. One thing is China had a huge manufacturing base and it was providing manufacturing facility to the global industries. And the slowdown in China due to lockdown is creating one opportunity for Indian manufacturing to increase their production and integrate more into the global and regional supply chain. Second is that there is a perception at the global level that if they concentrate their manufacturing in one country, there is higher risk involved. That at point of time, there are certain problems in that country, the whole supply chain becomes restricted. So they want to shift their manufacturing to other countries, and India is very well poised because of democracy, good infrastructure, large market demand domestically, and a stable government, and the business and industry's favorable policies, and we have good natural resources also. So this is creating an opportunity. And even our energy problem, etc., is not that acute what Europe is facing.
Dr. Mehta and Mr. Agarwal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
India's Minister of State for Electronics, IT, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, called upon students to acquire technological and digital skills as innovations and startups will present expanded job opportunities in the next decade. He was interacting with students of the St. Paul's School in Thrissur, Kerala. The minister said India today is the fastest growing economy and is attracting the highest global investments. He observed that while the country was importing 92% of its mobile phones in 2014, it now manufactures 97% and exports 70,000 crore rupees worth mobile phones today.
Indian Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral R. Hari Kumar, has said that the aim of the Indian Navy is to have made in India, made by India and made for India security solutions so that it can strengthen the move towards Atmanirbharta or self-reliance. In his Navy Day press conference, Admiral Kumar said as far as the optimization of budget is concerned, the Indian Navy is driving self-reliance and development of indigenous technology, and it has adequate funding for all capital projects. He said the Navy is following the motto of being combat-ready, credible, cohesive and future-proof force. He also informed that Indian Navy has achieved very high operational tempo in the last 1 year. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
The US Air Force has unveiled its newest nuclear stealth bomber, the B-21, on Saturday, which will gradually replace aircraft first flown in the Cold War. The first new bomber in 30 years could cost nearly $700 million each and can carry nuclear and conventional weapons. No specific details have been shared, but the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said it was a testament to America's enduring advantages in ingenuity and innovation. The B-20 Raider was unveiled during a ceremony at manufacturer Northrop Grumman's facility in California. Mr. Austin said the plane would offer significant advances over existing bombers in the U.S. fleet, stating that even the most sophisticated air defense systems will struggle to detect the B-21 in the sky. The first flight by a B-21 is expected to take place in mid-2023. It will eventually replace the B-1 and B-2 models, and the fleet is estimated to cost $203 billion to develop, buy and operate over 30 years, according to Bloomberg. The U.S. Air Force is planning to acquire at least 100 of the aircrafts. 7 vessels carrying agricultural products have left Ukraine's seaports under the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The Ukraine's infrastructure ministry has said that the ships, which departed from the ports in the southern Odessa region, will deliver 287,400 tons of goods to the countries in Asia. Since the grain initiative came into effect on August the 1st, Ukraine has exported 12.7 million tons of foodstuffs via its seaports. The ministry has also noted that the third ship entered the Odessa port for loading under a separate program, Grain from Ukraine. The vessel will deliver 25,000 tons of wheat to Somalia. The ministry said Ukraine plans to send more than 60 vessels with wheat to countries in need by May next year under the Grain from Ukraine humanitarian program.
The United States has designated China, Iran and Russia as countries of particular concern under the Religious Freedom Act over severe violations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that North Korea and Myanmar also include in the list. The other countries designated as countries of particular concern were Pakistan, Cuba, Eritrea, Nicaragua, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. Algeria, the Central African Republic, Comoros and Vietnam were placed on the watch list. U.S. President Joe Biden has signed legislation to block a nationwide railroad strike that could have devastated the American economy. The U.S. Senate voted 80 to 15 on Thursday to impose a tentative contract deal reached in September on a dozen unions representing 115,000 workers who could have gone on strike on 9th of December. But the Senate failed to approve a measure that would have provided paid sick days to railroad workers.
In Indonesia, a quake of 6.1 magnitude hit West Java area on Saturday, the country's geophysics agency BMKG said, sending people running out of the buildings. The quake has no tsunami potential, the agency said. It was felt in capital Jakarta, around 200 kilometers from the epicenter. Abdul Muhari, spokesperson for Indonesia's disaster mitigation agency, said that 1 person was injured and 4 houses were damaged in the town of Garut. Some residents of other towns and cities in West Java said on social media they felt the quake strongly. Last month, a shallow quake of 5.6 magnitude hit West Java's Cianjur, killing more than 300 people. India's President Draupadi Murmu on Saturday conferred the National Awards for the Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities for the year 2021 and 2022. On the occasion of International Day of Persons with Disabilities at a function in New Delhi. National awards for 2021 were given to 25 individuals, institutions and organizations, while for 2022 awards were presented to 29 individuals, institutions and organizations for their outstanding achievements and work done towards empowerment of persons with disabilities.
An Indian origin businessman and charity worker, Mohan Mansegiani, has received the Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in recognition of his charitable services to healthcare at an investiture ceremony at Buckingham Palace in London. Mansegiani is known as a creative finance director with extensive private equity experience. India's ambassador to the United States, Taranjeet Singh Sandhu, has handed over the Padma Bhushan to Google and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai in San Francisco. He has been awarded Padma Bhushan in the trade and industry category. The Madurai-born Pichai was named one of the 17 awardees earlier this year. While receiving the award, Sundar Pichai said that India is part of him and he carries it with him wherever he goes.
Indian shooter Rudraksh Patil has clinched the International Shooting Sport Federation President's Cup held in Cairo, Egypt. He defeated Italy's Danilo Solazzo in the 10-meter rifle playoff by 16-8. Athletes from 42 nations from all continents are taking part in the competition. 18-year-old Patil also bagged India's first quota for the 2024 Paris Olympics. He clinched a gold in the men's 10-meter air rifle in the International Shooting Sport Federation Rifle Pistol World Championships, also held in Cairo in October this year.
The knockout stage of the FIFA Football World Cup kicked off on Saturday, with the Netherlands becoming the first team to reach the quarterfinals after beating United States of America 3-1 at the Khalifa International Stadium in Qatar. Memphis Depay opened the scoring for the Netherlands in the 10 minutes, while Daley Blind doubled the lead at halftime just before the break. Then Haji Wright gave some hope to US by scoring a goal in the 76th minute. However, just minutes later, Denzel Dumfries netted his first goal of the tournament to make it 3-1 for the Netherlands. In the second match later tonight, Group C topper Argentina will face Group D runner-up Australia in the crucial knockout match. In hockey, Indian men's team lost 5-1 to Australia in the fourth match of the Test series at the Mike Stadium in Adelaide on Saturday. With the third win in the five-match series, hosts have taken an unassailable 3-1 lead. Indian forward Dilpreet Singh scored in the second quarter before Jeremy Hayward, Jake Wetton, Tom Wickham, Matt Dawson put India on the back foot. Jeremy Hayward was declared the player of the match for scoring 2 goals. The last match of the series will be played in Adelaide on Sunday.
In cricket, the first match of the 3-match ODI series between India and Bangladesh will be played at Sher-e-Bangla National Stadium in Dhaka on Sunday. The match will start at 11:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Second ODI will be held on Wednesday and the third on Saturday at the same venue. The ODI series will be followed by 2 test matches, a crucial red ball rubber for India in the battle for the final of the World Test Championship. The first test will start on the 14th of December at Zahur Ahmad Chaudhary Stadium in the port city of Chittagong, while the second test will be held on the 22nd of December at the Sher-e-Bangla National Stadium, Dhaka.
And now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Financial Times reports that US says Chinese solar companies have been evading tariffs. Wall Street Journal, Apple makes plans to move production out of China. The Guardian writes that China continues lifting COVID restrictions despite near record case numbers. Le Monde observes that faced with Chinese threat, Taiwan is on alert. Washington Post writes that South Africa's ruling party said it is still considering whether to allow legislators to start impeachment proceedings against President Cyril Ramaphosa. And Japan Times reports that Tokyo named among the world's best destinations for differently abled travelers.
And now, before we end, a quick look at the headlines once again. India and US successfully conclude 18th edition of Joint Military Exercise Yudh Abhyas in the Indian state of Uttarakhand. First G20 Sherpa meeting under Indian presidency to begin in Udaipur on Sunday. India's bioeconomy grew 8 times in the last 8 years. US Air Force unveils newest nuclear stealth bomber B-21 to replace aircraft flown in the Cold War. 7 vessels carrying agricultural products left Ukraine seaports under the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Indian shooter Rudraksh Patil clinches ISSF President's Cup in Egypt. At FIFA World Cup in Qatar, Netherlands beat US 3-1 to reach the quarterfinals. Argentina to take on Australia later tonight. And in cricket, first 3-match ODI series between India and Bangladesh to begin at Sher-e-Bangla National Stadium in Dhaka on Sunday. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from United Arab Emirates on their Independence Day.
Vaishnav Jan Tene kahiye je pide parai jane re par dukhe upkar kare soye man apna aaj re sakal lok man sabne vande Nakare keri re Vajkast man misal raake Dan dan janani teri re Vaishnav Jan.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.